Hello and welcome to the Rippling Pages podcast. This is the podcast where we have a coffee with the world's most interesting writers and where you can rely on writers to get real about writing. It's all crafted and curated by me, Liam Bishop. Now, what happens when a man's past gets in the way of his future? What happens when he's unable to avoid people and patterns that lend him to bad choices? And what happens when I speak to someone who has set this in some of the locales that I know? Stu Hennigan might want to answer some of those questions, but what I loved about Stu's novel is its sheer vividness of its writing, combining artfully the vernacular and the obscene, its evocations of northern towns and cities that are close to me for sure, but also its unflinching approach to troubling subject matter. Stu Hennigan is a writer, poet, editor, musician based in Leeds, UK. His acclaimed book, Ghost Signs, Poverty in the Pandemic, which was published by Blue Moose, became notable for its powerful documentary of the city's most deprived communities during the COVID-19 lockdown. KESHED, though, is his first novel, and it's published by Ortac Press. Stu Hennigan, I am delighted to have you on Rippling Pages.
Now then, cheers for having me.
Now then, indeed, and now then is, it's the book structure, but also the greeting of how many Northerners we greet one another with now and then, don't we? But this is the podcast with some of the world's most interesting writers, but I'm really delighted to have one of the world's most interesting writers who is based here in Leeds, a city that we both know very well. Probably done a thing, actually, that you've spoken about in interviews already, and this how this novel gets categorized. And it wasn't my intention to do that, but it's a novel that features Leeds, drugs, alcohol, the North, mental health, death, among many other things. But it almost feels like in some sense that you are trying to unqualify what this novel is and what it gets typecast as to some extent.
I mean, I've been speaking a lot about this at events. Like, you've got me on the ranting fucking question right at the start. But
maybe just to say, actually, in terms of this is probably one of the episodes where, in terms of listed parental advisory,
I will swear, I'll warn you. I've got ADHD and my filter is not great when I'm talking about stuff that I'm interested in. So
don't worry about that. It's an adult podcast.
Out, cashed it'd be half the size, wouldn't it? But yeah, there's a thing in publishing that sort of does the rounds, and they talk about, northern fiction and northern working class fiction, and I just think labels like that are really, really unhelpful. I mean, if people want to, I can kind of back it up as well. I mean, when Ghost Signs came out, I said even before it was published, like, I'm a fiction writer by trade. It's my favourite thing to write, and it's by far what I'm best at. And much as I like writing other things, the fact that my first book was non-fiction was total happenstance. The fact that my next book's non-fiction is total happenstance as well. I said, like, don't be trying to put me in this box as, like, angry political guy. Like, I'm not Owen Jones or, one of those gobshites who's got to have a fucking opinion on everything. And this isn't me. It's like I'm proud of that book as a social text and a documentary of the time and everything. That's not what I want to spend all of my writing life doing. Just before the book came out, it's set, some of the books set in Leeds, like you mentioned at the start, and I didn't actually specify that it was Leeds until really, really, really late on, because it was like, what I didn't want was, you've written a book about Leeds. Now you've got another one that's about Leeds, but it's fiction, even though only half of the book's set there, right? So I really, really thought hard about it. And then in the end, I was like, well, I can mention it once or twice because anybody who knows the city will identify it immediately. So there's not a lot of point in, like, not doing, but you don't have to, like, hammer it. And then it was borne out, really, because the TLS review that Alice Jolly wrote, which was absolutely amazing. I'm not, like, knocking the review. It's just an observation, was that she started by saying Ghost Signs was a book about poverty in Leeds. Now he's written a novel that's set here. And I did a Q&A for Alice Murphy Pyle on Substack. He's a great writer. She said the same thing. She asked a question along the lines of, like, a novel set in Leeds. And I said to her, what I'm saying to you now, I very nearly didn't mention it. Just wary of these kind of labels, right? Northern working class fiction is heavily coded as an expression, right? And it comes with a lot of assumptions about content and style and subjects and all of that stuff, right? I'm a writer from the North, and I'm a writer from a working class background. That doesn't define me, doesn't define my work. How does that define a fucking 500,000 word thing about Bret Easton Ellis? And, like, if you take when people asked me what my next book was after Ghost Signs, KESHED was already trying to sell it, and I was working on the Bret Easton Ellis one. And there were times, and I'd tell people, "Oh, it's a social and cultural history of America since the 1960s to the present day, interpreted through the pop culture references in Bret Easton Ellis." And people were like, I could see them like, and a couple of times I called them out politely, and to categorize it, to accept the terms to me is to legitimize it as if it's a separate thing. And it's not. You could take the plot of KESHED and you could set that anywhere in the UK. If you updated all of the references and the language, appropriately, said it in London, you could put it in Cornwall, you could put it fucking in Scotland, anywhere, because I've had readers from all over. Someone in Baltimore emailed me the other day, and it's like, it's a universal experience of being working class. It's not specific to the North.
Well, but it's also to say that it feels like you do have to unqualify to some extent. And I see this all the time. I see this all the time because it is a book about. I was just very excited to see Leeds represented in this really wonderfully poetic, interesting way, and that's something that I don't think we get a lot of. We don't get a lot of.
We don't.
Northern city's been depicted artfully, incredibly artfully, and we're going to get into how you do that. And it is this particular idea that people have of the North, and this is why I really loved your book, because it's a beautiful poetic description, unique, idiosyncratic in your whole voice, and I think we have to look at that. I mean, why don't you just tell us? And you started to tell us a little bit there before I cut you off, but why don't you just tell us what this novel is about and who it's about?
The novel's about a guy called Sean Malloy, and he essentially is. The book opens with a kind of mad, fragmented scene where it actually starts with 2 pages that are just completely black. And then it comes in with like fragmented white text on a black background. And then there's like maybe 750 words that are completely unpunctuated. There's no conjunctions, there's no pronouns, very few prepositions. And he wakes up in a horrible sort of place, in a horrible state. And the novel is basically how he got there. So there are 2 narratives that are kind of tell the story, really. That fractured, crazy voice, that it opens and closes the book. There are 3 other really short episodes which use that voice, although it develops a little bit in each one and then falls off again at the end. But there are the other 2 narratives are they're much more straightforward in register, I guess. So you've got a 3rd-person narrative that starts when he's in his early 20s, which moves forward up to the point where he's at the beginning of the novel. And then you've got a 2nd-person narrative that starts at the same place but moves backwards. And it sort of goes back to his childhood. It's not quite chronological. It more or less is. And those 2 things kind of combined, interspersed with the little bits of what's happening right now in this fractured kind of narrative, that leads up to explaining why he's where he is at the beginning.
We go on a real journey with Sean, and where has Sean come from, and why is he in Leeds?
So Sean's he comes from just a kind of small provincial shithole in Yorkshire. He's come to Leeds via Manchester. He managed to get out of his hometown, went to uni in Manchester, and comes back from there because all of the rich kids are going off on gap years and we're just taking some time to figure things out, and he's got nothing to do. He's got no fucking money, and he ends up stuck back in his hometown, and he's just doing his nut. It's like he's like living in a Arab Strap song of just promiscuous sort of drug use and drinking. He's not happy there, as he wasn't happy there before. It's the last place that he wants to be. And then he goes out on the piss in Leeds with a mate of his in the opening chapter. He's introduced to someone called Mandy, and then it's boy meets girl and shit happens and off you go.
This is a novel that you've alluded to there. This is a novel that moves, and it moves around a lot, and there's a lot of movement. And Sean, of all the things that he is, he almost felt like he was flaneur in some sense. He might not use that word. He might not identify with that word, but the way he moves through place and cities and
yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, I know the word, but it's not a word that I'd associate readily with him. He's more like more like a kind of mendicant alcoholic.
Touche. I mean, a lot. Baudelaire was pretty. He was known as a flaneur. He was a pretty.
It does cover a lot. It does cover a lot of ground, though. And that's the thing again with people saying the novel is set in Leeds. Yeah. It's set at least maybe half of it's set in Leeds, but a lot of it's set in his hometown. Mm-hmm. Some of it's in Manchester. It mentions Scarborough, the Lake District, Whitby. There's lots and lots and lots of other places that kind of come into it as well as he's moving around various places. And I think one of the things that, I mean, it wasn't deliberate to, I need to make sure that these places are in. The story goes where the story goes. But like you said, I think that the one thing that I was trying to do, I guess, was that you never see like a really well-rounded portrait of the working class, either fictionally or on screen. It's rare. You either get, it sounds quite pithy this, but you either get the royal family, which is wonderful, and there's an awful lot of pathos in that show, but it's a comedy, right? So you've got that side.
Talking about not the royal family, for any listeners, there's a sitcom here, they're called The Royal Family. It's spelled Royle, and it's about that working class family from Manchester who's literally sitting in front of the telly, but it's very tender and funny and beautiful show. But sorry, Stu.
That when the Royal Family first started in the 90s, when I was a teenager, that was the first time I'd seen people like me on the telly. It's like, fucking hell, it's me dad. That guy's like my Uncle Brian coming around selling fucking Hucky trainers out of a carrier bag, and but you've either got a kind of comic portrayal or a stereotype portrayal of it, which that is, but it's coming from a place of love and understanding. I'm not like knocking the show. The show's absolutely incredible. But you've either got that, or on the other end, you've got Raining Stones. And Ken Loach, it's polemic, isn't it? So you only get one side of it, and it's not. What you never get is that, yes, a lot of the time it is Ken Loach, but you can have Ken Loach and the royal family at the same time. It's not. This doesn't exist in isolation. You can still have people having a really shit time. It doesn't mean that there's not laughter and warmth and meaningful relationships, but you never see it. I started writing again after it was completely random. It was one of those great sliding doors moments where I got asked to cover an event at work. I shouldn't have even been doing it. Someone was off sick. And a writer called Jen Ashworth was coming in to do Fell, which was her fourth novel, I think. Big Do's and Little Do's. We got stuck in my car for like 2.5 hours in traffic. There are lots and lots of writers I might not want to be stuck in my car for 2.5 hours with. Jen's an absolute sweetheart, and we had loads to talk about because she grew up just over the border from me. I'm from Skipton, and it's right on the border. So I used to have a lot of family over there. She writes a lot about Morecambe, which is a place I know really well, in Lancashire and stuff. And it was like, I knew her bit of the world. She knew mine. Came from a similar background. Both went to Manchester Uni, although she did a postgrad course there. And it was like, I came out of it. And then we got stuck in my car again after the event because she kept getting me lost trying to find the hotel in town. And I came out of it and I was like, why are you writing your 5th book and publicising your 4th, given all that? And she's a couple of years younger than I am. And I haven't done anything. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's because you've been working your ass off for 15 years and I've been sat at home getting pissed and bemoaning my undiscovered genius. Kidding. But once I got back into it and I sort of got, caught up a bit with some of what was current in publishing. And then you get writers like Jen and Naomi Booth, who's amazing. James Clark, who's brilliant. The Hollow in the Land. What a fucking great book that is.
Yeah, I've had James on the podcast.
Have you? He's a good lad, isn't he? When I started reading those things, and it was like, oh wow, Todmorden, or whatever, Burnley, and it's all these places that were just to see the names as much as anything. Ben Meyer's writing about like the Calder Valley and stuff in the Gallows Pole. It's kind of like, wow, it's actually okay to like write about these things. And it isn't again, it's not in future. I'm not exclusively tied to writing about that location. Take a writer like Annie Proulx, who's a genius. And for anyone listening who is despairing about whether or not they're ever going to get published, she didn't publish her first novel till she was 60, and she's one of the best there's ever been. And like, you think about her, and you've got these amazing pyrotechnic descriptions of the, nothing, the great emptiness of the plains and the great emptiness of the sky above it. But what she's actually concerned with is the people that occupy those landscapes, but they're shaped by it, and they shape the landscape by living and working on it, and the language that they use to describe it. All the three things are linked.
That's a brilliant articulation of how, and that's what I was trying to, I said it was about Leeds in the introduction, and I'm conscious I didn't mean to rile you up, but maybe.
No, you didn't rile me up in the slightest.
This is why I really like it, because it is just about a place. It's about a place that I know very well, but it's about a subjective perception of a place and all those things that you've just said. And it is so interesting. There's something about this that it's very earnest. It's a very earnest book, and Sean is a very earnest character. And there's something in the way that, I don't mean relatability in the way that it's a character that I relate to because he's from Leeds and similar. Yeah, I notice and recognize things about Sean. I mean, there's the voice that you write in, and this might very well go into the close read that I do, which is for Patreon subscribers, where I really look at a passage of the text. It's the voice of Sean, and he's a brilliant companion through this novel. It's full of very dark themes, and Sean makes some really questionable decisions. We want him to strive and do well, but he makes some really questionable choices about the people and his family. But the way that it's like, to me, it was like meeting someone, and I don't mean someone meeting someone on the street. When you sort of see him do the directions through Leeds and the cities or wherever he is, it was as if you just met someone and you'd asked them to give you some directions somewhere, and he's telling you how to go about it in the way that he knows how to go about it. You go past the offie, you go past all the places where the pissheads and the artists used to live. And it's as if you just suddenly met someone on the street who was wanting to be very generous with their time with you. Because I guess you have to do that the way that you're writing about some of the themes that you write about.
I think he's a very well-rounded character in how I've drawn him, I guess, because there are so many different kind of levels to him, I guess. He's got a lot of love, but he doesn't kind of really know how to say it. And there's all this baggage that he's carrying around that you find out a lot about as kind of time goes on. And some of his behavior is absolutely fucking terrible. I think that the way that the story is told, I think his behavior can be explained, but not excused or justified at times. I think there are certain things to do with his mental health and how that makes him react in certain situations, and how he deals with relationship issues and things like that. The various different strands of the backstory, if you read between the lines of those, they kind of explain why that might happen, but that doesn't justify behaving like a prick. I grew up in this kind of environment, and everyone is sexist, everyone is racist, everyone's homophobic. They still use fucking language that you would have thought died in the 70s, even now. Books were my window on the wider world. That's why I didn't grow up to think and behave in that way. If I'd have only read books that were relatable to me and my environment, there's not a lot. You should be able to read books to take you out of yourself, and you should be able to relate to stuff that's out of your own sphere of experience, because if the writer's done a good enough job of rendering that world and the characters, you've got to be able to put yourself in their position. That's why you read, isn't it?
100%. And that's why that's what's helped me emerge out of some of those environments. It's the reading different, that's writers that we have on the Rippling pages from different places, backgrounds, cultures, languages, and I think that is, and I think to some extent, you have to make some choices about how we're going to go with Sean on this quite dark journey.
There's nothing worse than that fucking prick at a party who laughs at his own jokes, but KESHED is quite a funny book, I think, in and amongst all of the other things. Not a lot of people have mentioned it. I don't think I've been asked about it once in interviews. Like, a couple of readers have said it, and a couple of people have said it to me privately. The humour that's in it is all part and parcel of the language. So one of the most fun bits to write for me was there's a chapter called Tez. It's actually the third chapter, which is all about his uncle, and probably at least half of that chapter is pure dialogue. But I set it up that chapter by saying that Tez was like a local hero or a local anti-hero, and that it didn't matter who you were speaking to, everyone knew the stories off by heart. So then you've got this back and forth between these anonymous voices telling the story of this guy's life, basically. And it's quite a sad story. Again, there's funny bits, but all the way through it, in the way that that conversation pans out, there's humour underpinning all of it. There's this gentle, they're always taking the piss out of each other slightly. They're always taking the piss out of what they're talking about a little bit, even when it's something really serious and really sad. Because where I come from, and, in a lot of kind of working class cultures, I guess, in my experience, you deprive tragedy of some of its power by laughing at it. And it doesn't mean that you feel it any less. But it's just one of the things that you do, because, you'd either do that or die crying, wouldn't you? Like my grandmother said. I didn't sit down at the beginning, like fucking Martin Amis or something, and say, I'm going to write a great novel of the times, and it's going to be about masculinity and class and about this and this and this. Because that's horse before cart. I've just got a story about some people and their environment. And that's all these other issues are what shapes people's lives. That's how those things filter into it. And where the text does cover those, it's in relation to how they affect the characters, rather than me wanting to write about those things and creating some characters and a plot as a vehicle to deal with it.
Yeah, it's funny. It did make me think about Martin Amis in a way, and the way he depicts different classes. Amis's characters he's not sympathetic. Is it? Are you after a kind of? Does any of this relate to an idea of truth?
I think just the truth of the truth of the culture and the place and the people and the language, basically, because it, as we've said, like, it's so rare to. Having said that, I don't need to relate to a text. I absolutely don't. That little thrill of recognition that you get sometimes, though, when someone describes like a place that you know really, really well, even if it's just a passing reference in something, and it'll mention like a pub on the corner in such and such a village or whatever, and you're like, oh, I know that. And it's like the kind of, I just wanted people to be able to feel that. That's what I wanted, I guess. And when the first person that I sent a complete version of this to, or more or less a complete version of it as a reader, was somebody that I know. I've known them online for years and years and years. He's an ex-miner from Barnsley, 10 years older than me, I think, something like that. He was on strike in the 80s and all of that. I said, will you have a look at this for us, our kid? See what he thinks. Big reader and everything. And he's like, yeah, sounds, send it over. When he got back to me, literally, this is verbatim, his feedback was, fucking loved it, mate. Every word fiercely authentic, right? And I was like, job done. Because that says more to me than pages and pages and pages of critique, because no one is better qualified than that person to know whether or not I've rendered the people and the places and the language and all of those things that I was trying to do, because that's his people and his places and his language and his culture, and the truth of the portrayal and that well-rounded portrayal of all of those things. That was the most important thing when I was writing. It had to be real. And it had to be real in a way that the people who are of that world would know that it's real. I mean, I've had like men in their 50s texting me in tears, which is quite ironic given what the book's about, and half of it is about how people like us can't do that and why. But they're not in tears over the sad bits. There was someone texted me, and he's a writer, actually. I'm not going to say who it was because it wouldn't be fair. But he said he'd gone out with, he'd taken his kids out to an amusement arcade or something. He took the book with him, And he said he was in tears at the test chapter just because he said, this is my upbringing in the 70s and I've never seen it.
Wow.
Never seen it like this. That was a really long answer, but there's a lot to say.
I like it. I don't worry about that. Truth is it's quite a naughty concept, isn't it? But yeah, I responded that in a different way. Responded in a different way to that. But I think for me, what it did for me, why I had such a personal response to it is because it's, places I know, but I have very personal responses to books that are set in, that are set in Tibet or other side of the world or Australia or places I've never been before. But I think it's that sense of what it brought back to me is it kind of made me feel a little bit lost in a sense in a place that I think I know. And this is what I felt when I read your book of Ghost Signs. I was like, goodness gracious, this is a place that I thought I knew, but there's all these people living in. And it reminded me how far away that I'd sort of come from those early experiences, my early, communities, and it actually made me dream about when I used to grow up and the people that I used to sort of play.
You're not the first person that said that. It's like
it's just come back to
people's minds left, right.
Yeah. But the kids that I used to play with, who were from really working class backgrounds, and the way we used to talk and the way we used to communicate. I'm so far away from that now. I do a podcast and I talk about books in this particular register, and I have a very nice job in working in the universities.
I'm a lot closer. I didn't grow up Ghost Signs poor, right? There's gradations to it, as I said, but in terms of my upbringing and my cultural reference points and my family background and how people are where I'm from, I'm a lot closer to these people than I am to the person that's asking the question. But because I can speak articulately in public and because I do an okay job, they just think I'm like the educated white middle class, and I'm not. That's not where I'm from. No one in my family stayed at school post 16. Never mind went to uni. And Sean finds himself in a really similar situation, and you get this thing where you don't really belong in either world because you're too highfalutin for the people at home, but the people over here still think you're rough as fuck, and there's that culture clash thing. But the kind of dynamics of that are really, really interesting. And Sean doesn't fit anywhere. That's the thing. It doesn't matter where. For all that he wanders, it's him that's the problem.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we have a quick break? Both going to grab a coffee and come back and talk more about KESHED by Stu Hennigan. Now, did you know that there is a Rippling Pages Patreon? For a small monthly fee, you can get exclusive member benefits, including Rippling Pages merchandise, the curated craft insights, and exclusive reveals of upcoming guests before anybody else. And you also get a shout out on the show, which brings me to my latest subscribers, who Stu and I are going to very warmly, that's not a word, is it? Very warmly. Very warmly thank. So I'm going to thank Hussein Fowler for joining the Rippling Page Patreon,
and I'm going to thank AJ Davidge. So thank you for supporting the podcast. It's really important that people help out where they can. So cheers.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for that. Okay, well let's get back into it then. Let's get back into KESHED by Stu Hennigan. Welcome back, Stu. Did you have a nice break?
Definitely. I needed a caffeine bomb, and I've had one. So jobs.
Jolly good. Well, I've got a coffee. We'll get back into your book. We mentioned Mandy, but I think we need to talk a little bit more about. And this is a real conduit for some of the tenderness and the romance for sure, and happy moments in the book.
The female characters were really, really, really important to me because what I was after. So, saying it's rare that you get that portrayal in fiction. Pat Barker, her first 3 books that she did for Virago, did Union Street, Blow Your House Down, and Liza's England, I think it's called. That portrayal of a northern working class woman of those generations, that was the gold standard for me, like in terms of how well-rounded and everything that I was trying to do, because in the culture that I'm writing about, in the kind of backstory, ostensibly it's a very male-dominated drinking culture, but everyone knows that without this group of fucking rock-hard women, it's them that are in charge and they're pulling the strings all the time. But you can't actually say that because it's completely unspoken, even though everyone knows it's true, especially the men. And kind of had to get that right for a start. So, I mean, the first person to see it was Naomi Booth. I mean, I sent it to her for lots of reasons. I mean, she's a really good mate of mine. Like I said, she's one of my favourite writers. She's got a fucking brilliant critical eye, critical brain. So the first one, essentially, have I got these, you should be able to read this and go, oh, that's me mum, it's me gran, whatever. So that was fine. In terms of Mandy and the other characters, with Mandy, I said to, in the kind of list of questions, I said to Naomi, like, the way that she's got to come across, she's obviously from a very different kind of background to to Sean's mum and his grandma. And she's a lot more, she's just different. She's a very different person. And again, there's so much in the subtext where there are like little lines, but he's running around like drinking and thinking that he's one step ahead of her all the time when he's booking off to the pub quickly when he gets off the bus after work and stuff. And then every now and again, she'll just throw in something just so that he knows that she's onto him. And it's like, do you think you can cover up the smell of brandy with chewing gum or something? And she knows. And it was like, I said, did you pick that up? Because it's all well and good burying things in the subtext, but if you bury it so far that your fucking reader can't see it.
How important then was that feedback from someone like Naomi Tell? Was it about the validation of confirmation that, okay, I have delivered this character?
I took it to Naomi, right? And bear in mind the book's not finished at this point. I've still got work to do. I thought I'd done a pretty good job of the female characters at that point. And the questions that I asked for each one, it was like, with all the best will in the world, I'm not a woman, right? So I need a woman who to tell me, for a start, as stupid as it sounds, and if she can see it, if it's good enough for her at that stage, I kind of know that I'm on the right track with it, I guess. And if I hadn't been, then she'd have told me and I would have done something about it. There's a couple of other ones. There's Poppy, who is Mandy's best mate. And she's posh. She's like from old money. And she sort of represents the pull of Sean's old life in a sense. He's always a little bit jealous and she's a bit full on for him at first. It was a really interesting relationship to draw and I had a lot of fun with it. I get really involved. I was madly in love with Poppy by the time I'd finished the book. And with her, she had to be a little bit over the top because that's her character is over the top and those people are. To do that and not have it be a kind of stereotype or a cartoon character, really difficult. And that was, again, they were the kind of things that I was asking Naomi at the time. And there's a character called Denise, was just terrific fun to write because she's Sean's boss, where he works at the council in the housing office, and she's just fucking evil. She doesn't like him at all. He can do no right. He thinks she's a knobhead. No one likes her, but everyone's sort of frightened of her. And a lot of it, how you draw the characters out, or how I did it. And again, this is something that Naomi does really, really, really well. Not a lot of writers think to do it, and she'll do it in a short story, never mind in a novel. But every character has kind of got their own mode of speech, and there are little kind of quirks in the little bits of vocabulary that they use and how they formulate the sentence. That's the kind of attention to detail, which means that she's like one of my go-to people every time. It doesn't matter what I'm writing. And with Denise, that's how I brought it out. This horrible kind of corporate speak and referring to all these rules and regulations, and then Sean describes her as the type of wanker that would tell you to disinfect the shitters and then spend all day complaining about the smell of the bleach.
I remember that line, yeah. Mandy's not a secondary character, but the other secondary characters is that way of how do you portray who these people are within a very short space of time without turning them into stereotypes.
Yeah, and the second characters, even though that's what we call them, they're every bit as important as the main ones. It's just they don't occupy a prominent place in the narrative. But if you're wanting the on a technical level, if you're wanting a piece of work to be, properly deep and detailed and all of the, a very real self-contained world, every single character has got to be as strong as the main ones, even if they're only in it for a scene. I'm just fucking pathologically nerdy and obsessive about all of these things. Everything has got to be right. This is what it was funny when we did the launch event, there were questions and it was like, how did you portray blah, blah, blah? What do you do to get this effect? And the answer to nearly every question was like, you just fucking work and work and work and work and work at it. And when you under the desk, like fetal and rocking, and you want to set yourself on fire, you don't, and you get back up and you just work, you carry on doing it. And take someone like Jimi Hendrix, right? Some ridiculously, protein musical talent, whoever it might be. Jimi Hendrix didn't just wake up one morning and be able to play the guitar like that. He still had to pick it up for the first time and learn how to play A, E, and G and everything. It's like, it doesn't matter how much like natural ability you've got. If you don't work at it, it's nothing. And you've got to me, I want to keep improving all the time. I want the next piece to be better than the last one.
It is a choice, and and you've got to, then as you said, you've got to work at making that choice a reality, and it's hard work, and it's really, no matter who you are, and every other writer says that on the podcast. Every single writer said it's really bloody hard work, and no matter how talented you are or who your parents are, you've still got to write something.
You've got to trust your readers as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So the small presses are expected to take risks, even though financially they're the least able to do it. But even for a small press to publish a book that's as kind of early as this one is in this climate, but the response to it, we sold 1,000 copies in 2 months for a press the size of Ortac. Granted, I've got a pre-existing audience, but even so, it's some going, and there are people out there who like interesting and challenging and whatever, and you've just got to think that the readers will go with it. If you have done a good enough job of putting them in your world, all of those stylistic choices and the aesthetic choices and the structural things, and all the little kind of quirks of it, that, there's so much in there that's non-standard. There's a lot of vernacular in it. You got to trust that even if you can use the vernacular, and even if people don't know the words, they'll get it from the context, which is, that's a whole other kind of worms. But you've always got to start with the assumption that your readers are smarter than you.
And it is, and that's it, and that's what it feels like. It feels like you are entering a space and a place where you are getting on ground level with the way people communicate, and that's what makes. There are other novels in other cultures and countries that do this kind of thing, but it's the choices that you make in terms of this novel. It's reached. I've seen you retweeting on Blue Sky all the people that are reading it around the world, and
goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Despite all of these things, that if this was northern working class fiction, as if that's a geo-specific thing that is only relatable to people from there, none of this would be happening. And it's, even though because the sense of place is so strong and because it uses all of that language, yes, it's tied to the place in terms of this specific text. There's nothing particularly northern about the story outside of the setting, as I've said, but it's drawing people in rather than using those things as a barrier where, well, if you don't understand this language, you're not going to be able to read the book. You've got to use it as a way to invite people into the world, not keep them out of it.
Yeah, it's a communal sense of communication, rather than you're not using the language to suggest that a barrier is in the way people do communicate. It's to suggest that even though there are idiosyncrasies and vernaculars, that we can still communicate as human beings across different borders.
Letting people enjoy the poetry and the humour of that vernacular as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Even familiar with it, because so much kind of contemporary British fiction is written in this like non-voice, where it's like this sort of written equivalent of like estuary English, RP or whatever. And I was sitting down in a westerly direction when it just sort of, like, I don't want or expect everything to be written like this book is. That's not what I mean. But one of the biggest things for me, if I'm going to really, really love a book, give me a voice and give me a proper one that's going to pull me in. Like someone like Ben Myers, he's a fucking genius at it, right? And I've said this to a lot of writers who haven't necessarily clocked it. he has a completely different voice for every single book that he does, and they are watertight, right? That takes some fucking chops to do that. It really, 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 really does. But he's so good at getting the story in motion right from the start. People don't even realise that he's doing it.
Yeah, I thought of Ben. He's on my notes here actually. Ben Myers. He came to mind reading you, and yeah, I mean, the Gallows Bill comes to mind, but there's such a strong narrative, you know. And then again, talking about the North, you know, that's set in the Crag Vale, which is in the Pennines. But I'm not from the Pennines, and I was like, I don't understand. This is set in the past, and I don't understand it. But you still, and this is the thing about reading, isn't it? You read across. Yeah, it's reading across boundaries and borders and voices, and that's the whole beauty of reading, isn't it?
I'm not knocking it because it's. I suppose it sounds like I'm a little bit. What I'm saying is
it's more the machinations that you.
It's tied in
the market.
Tied in with the market. Yeah, it's not that to write extremely good prose and very good books using that voice. What I'm saying is it's nice when you get things that aren't, and when you when you get stuff that uses different voices within a text. I mean, there's 3 really distinct voices in KESHED. They're all relating to the same character. I think that's more interesting as a reader, personally. And even within that, there's room for kind of using other things. There's a chapter, when I said his life was like an Arab strap song, there's a chapter called The Shy Retirer, which is actually named after one of theirs. And it's when he's come back from uni and he falls in with this crowd of people and he's just getting off his tits all the time and living a fairly dissolute life. And there's a chapter, there's a bit in there where he ends up sleeping with this lass who starts the night by giving him a bollocking because he copped off with her mate's with her mate behind his back the week before or something. And because they're off their heads, and there's nothing for all of the drinking and the drug taking in the book, there's never any point where I try and describe it because that's fucking boring as well. Like if you've never taken drugs, words on a page can't describe to you how it feels, and if you have, words on a page can't capture it. So, but you can try and capture the vibe without saying his brain was feeling his whatever. And the voices, or the way that the prose is in those bits, is very different again, even to what you're seeing within the other voices. It's why I write. I like playing with language and the kind of endless possibilities of just arranging words in different sequences to make them say different things. And it's from the point of view of, like, you know, Stu, the shambling guy that doesn't write and all of the rest of it. It's like, it's just fucking black marks on a bit of paper that have come out of my head. That's mad, but that's why I do it. The fact that those little marks that come out of your head can do that to people all over the world, that's fucking magic to me, man. I'll never, ever, ever, never tire of it. Really, it's incredible.
Well, that's a lovely message, Stu. That's a lovely message for anyone who's trying to write. And that's the beauty of, it is, at least you do come from Leeds, and that book from Leeds, from Leeds, it's not a Leeds novel, but it is something that hopefully is inspiring people around the world, as you say, but anyone who is around in Leeds, for sure, that you can have a go at some of this magic, for sure. And I think that's quite a nice way to bring this round, Stu. Give Stu a follow on his Substack. He's very active on Blue Sky. You can see what he's up to. He's got his next book coming out with Ortac Press, which is about Bret Easton Ellis, and that is another departure from this oeuvre that Stu is developing. So yeah, go give Stu a follow, go give Ortac Press a follow, and then I'm also, as you may know already, I'm in conversation next month at Leeds Lit Fest with Alice Hattrick, talking about their next book, Fancy, which is published by Fitzgerald, and I can't wait for that one. So tickets for all that are in the show notes. I'll put a link to Stu's Substack in the show notes as well, so you can go and have a look at that, go and get access to that as well. KESHED is published by Ortac Press, written by my brilliant guest, brilliant company. You're absolutely fantastic company, as is Sean in his own twisted ways. I have loved spending this time with him talking about KESHED. But it's out now. Go out and buy it. But for now, Stu Hennigan, thank you very much for joining me on the Rippling Pages.
Cheers for having me.